Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking an absolutely shattering, pivotal scene from the Mahabharata. We're diving straight into the source text to look at the immediate, tragic aftermath of the infamous dice game. The bets are lost, the rules of the wager are locked in. Now we're going to examine exactly how this departure into exile actually unfolds and the intense emotional fallout it creates for everyone involved.
Right off the bat, the text hits us with this stark, brutal visual. We start in the wailing inner apartments of the Pandavas, and our focus is immediately drawn to the horrifying reality facing Princess Draupadi. As she gets ready for this awful journey, the text explicitly describes her taking a tearful leave, wearing just a single piece of cloth, stained with blood, with her hair completely disheveled. She's been brutally stripped of her royal dignity. But, as you'll see through her interactions, she absolutely retains her fierce virtue and inner composure.
All right, let's move into Section 1, a tearful farewell.
So Kunti, the mother of the Pandavas, is just reeling from seeing Draupadi in this state. She goes up to her daughter-in-law, and rather than just pitying her, she actually blesses her and points out Draupadi's immense power. Kunti marvels at her, literally saying, "Fortunate are the Kauravas that they have not been burnt by thy wrath." She realizes that Draupadi's justifiable fury is so intense it could literally incinerate their cheering enemies on the spot. It's this fascinating reminder that sometimes holding back your anger is a much bigger display of power than unleashing it.
Then, as Kunti steps outside, we get this really jarring contrast. We know the Pandavas' intrinsic virtues, right? Kunti describes them as high-minded, good-mannered, and completely devoted to the gods. But look at their physical reality now. These exceptional guys are stripped of their ornaments, literally wearing deerskins, and hanging their heads in absolute shame while their foes are just cheering. It's an incredibly brutal contradiction to witness.
Which brings us to Section 2, Kunti's bitter lament.
Kunti is trying to process this unyielding grief, and it gets really complex. First, she can't find any logical reason for this punishment, so she just blames her own bad luck. She deeply regrets ever leaving the Sahadeva mountains after her husband died. And here's the really wild part. Her grief is so incredibly heavy that she actually starts envying the dead. She envies her late husband, Pandu, figuring he's lucky he died before he had to feel the pain of seeing his sons like this. She even envies her co-wife Madri for achieving emancipation instead of having to live through this dark day.
Moving right along to Section 3, questioning fate and faith. Unable to bear parting with her kids, Kunti kind of curses her own desire to keep living. She literally asks the creator of the universe, Datta or Brahma, if he just, forgot to schedule her death. She feels so completely out of place in this timeline of suffering that she actually assumes her being alive must just be some sort of administrative error by the gods.
Then she throws this desperate plea straight at the divine Krishna. She directly challenges the divine, asking why a being who is without beginning and without end is just letting good, virtuous people suffer so incredibly deeply. It's a massive, universal question, isn't it? When terrible things happen to good people, why does the universe stay so quiet?
But hey, her anger isn't just meant for the heavens. She fiercely targets the earthly protectors too. She specifically names the elders, Bhishma, Drona, and Kripa. Kunti points out that these are men who are supposed to be experts in morality and worldly affairs. So she demands to know, how on earth could this massive calamity happen while these supposedly wise, powerful men just sat there and watched her children get banished?
In a final, just completely heartbreaking act of maternal desperation, she turns to her youngest stepson, Sahadeva. The text shows her literally begging him not to go. She tells him he's dearer to her than her own body, pleading with him, "Forsake me not." She tries to convince him that by staying behind to take care of her, he'd earn just as much virtue as he would by sticking by his brothers. You can really feel the maternal panic here.
Let's look at Section 4, the departure to exile.
The source text actually tracks the physical sequence of this tragedy almost hour by hour. First, the Pandavas try to console their weeping mother, and then, with heavy hearts, they set out for the pathless woods. After that, Vidura, who is absolutely heartbroken himself by the way, uses reason to calm a shattered Kunti and slowly leads her away to his own house to keep her safe. And finally, we see the immediate fallout inside the palace itself.
The gravity of this whole injustice really ripples through the opposing side too. When the royal ladies of Dhritarashtra's household heard about the exile and what happened to Draupadi, well, they definitely weren't celebrating. The text says they loudly wept and openly condemned the Kauravas. And then they just fell into this stunned silence, covering their faces for a long time. It really shows us that even the quote-unquote winning side knows when a victory is inherently unjust. It's this powerful image of collective shame permeating the very house that supposedly won.
And that brings us to Section 5, Anxiety in the Court.
So on one hand, you have the Pandavas walking away into a literal physical exile, completely broke. But look at the supposed victor here, King Dhritarashtra. The source explicitly tells us he is already agonizing over the dangers threatening his sons. He's fallen prey to total anxiety and has completely lost his mental equanimity through his grief. He might still be sitting on the throne, sure, but his mind is in absolute torment.
Consumed by this dread, the anxious king takes immediate action. He urgently summons his counselor Vidura, called Kshata in this passage, demanding he come without a moment's delay. The second Vidura arrives, the monarch starts grilling him, intensely anxious to know exactly how the Pandavas left Hastinapur. He is totally obsessing over the details of their departure, completely unable to just let it go.
Which leads us to this final, really provocative thought to wrap up today's explainer. If the Kauravas won this gamble so decisively, why is the orchestrator of the whole thing totally paralyzed by anxiety? What exact dangers is King Dhritarashtra already seeing that just rob him of his peace in his moment of supposed victory? The Pandavas might have lost their kingdom today, but did the Kauravas just seal their own doom? Think about that for a bit. Thanks so much for joining me today, and as always, keep questioning what you read.